Subscribe now. EU debates.
The Foreign Affairs Council, you never know when it's finishing. We are starting the high-level week in the United Nations. It is the traditional informal meeting of the Foreign Affairs Ministers, which has provided us with a good opportunity to coordinate our messages, to outreach, and to explain the political leaders from around the world, which will be gathering here in New York. Certainly it is the most important platform for multilateral engagement to tackle world's problem, and we, the European Union and our member states, will have a very strong presence here. Last year we were talking about Afghanistan. You will remember. Afghanistan was the key issue. This year, the Ukraine will be very high in the agenda. It will be unavoidable. There are many other problems, we know. But the war in Ukraine has been sending shock waves around the world. It's not only Ukraine who is suffering from this war. The Ukrainian people are being bombed with missiles and with guns, and the rest of the world is being affected by the price increase in energy and food insecurity, are being affected by, as a consequences, the economic problems. We can say that the war is affecting everybody on earth. It's not only against Ukraine, it's about all of us. And this is what we will try to explain here in New York. We want to promote international support for Ukraine, not because it's our neighbor, or not only because it's our neighbor and our partner, because we are strongly convinced that defending Ukraine, we're defending the principles that everybody who is coming here to New York has signed. The principles of international law, sovereignty and independency of the countries. And we will continue to explain that to our partners in Asia, Africa, Latin America, who is the real culprit of the growing instability, energy and food crisis. And we will demonstrate that the European Union doesn't forget and remains committed to addressing other challenges and crises in other parts of the world, and there are many. But for us, it's not a question of choosing between Ukraine and the others. We can do all at the same time. We care about Ukraine, and we care about the rest of the world. And this is what we will do during this critical week, using this opportunity. We need to continue pushing back the Russia propaganda and its misleading narrative. And allow me to do it a little bit here, because I want to mention some facts. The United Nations Grain Deal and our efforts through the solidarity lanes have already led to decrease in food prices worldwide. Most of the Ukrainian exports has gone to the countries that need them. Look at the data, look at the statistics. 2/3 of the Ukrainian exports have gone to Africa, to the Middle East and Asia. So it's not true what Mr. Putin says, that the grain that has been exported from Ukraine has not gone to the people that need it. 2/3 to Africa, Middle East and Asia. And we would not be in such a situation if Russia had not launched this illegal aggression against Ukraine and blocked Ukrainian exports in the first place. in addition to bombing Ukrainian agricultural infrastructure, destroying and looting Ukrainian grain supplies. Now they are flowing, but they will arrive late for many people who have been suffering hunger. I want to stress that our sanctions are targeting the Russia war economy, not food or agriculture. Our sanctions apply to European Union citizens and European Union operators. They apply only in the European Union territory. None of our sanctions targets the trade in fertilizers between third countries and Russia. Even us, we continue importing fertilizers from Russia with a limit. So how could we prevent our fertilizers going to third countries if we are still importing? On the other hand, many operators prefer not to do business with Russia anymore. It's their choice. It's not because they have to. It's because they don't want to. This is called overcompliance. They can, but they don't. They could, but they don't do. Not because of the sanctions, but because of the uncertainties of doing business with a regime that is killing and kidnapping civilians in a neighboring country. And unlike the one who aggravated the global food crisis, we are at the forefront in helping the affected countries to deal with it. We are co-leading the world efforts to face food security. We are doing that in the ground. We'll do it here with the events that will take place at UNGA. We have allocated 7.7 billion until 2024 to address the most immediate needs in this regard. And if you have a look at the amount of humanitarian help that we, European Union, and the member states has been provided, we are ranking much, much, much above what Russia is doing. This is from the point of view of humanitarian needs, economics, energy and food. But let's go to the military side of the problem. Today the ministers has all of them resolved to continue helping Ukraine to defend itself. And we will continue using the European Peace Facility to finance weapons delivery successfully and effective. We have also continued discussing about the proposal to establish an European Union military assistance mission. I can say that the work is underway, and I hope that we will see concrete results soon. And now the micro has gone.
It's good.
Doesn't work.
It's good for us.
It's working.
It's for you. Okay.
Now it's working.
Let me use this opportunity finally to talk about the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Russia must cease the occupation immediately. We support the establishment of a nuclear safety and security protection zone, as Dr. Grossi proposed in his report following the visit. I want also to use this opportunity to draw attention to the two OSCE staff members of the special monitoring mission to Ukraine who have been sentenced to 13 years in prison as a result of a so-called legal proceeding in Luhansk. They need to be unconditionally released immediately. And finally, this week we will be looking closely at the issue of accountability, because the reports on war crimes in Ukraine continue piling up. These atrocities cannot happen without the responsibles being accountable. We will continue supporting Ukraine in this regard through the joint investigation teams, supporting the ICC and the EU assistance mission to Ukraine. I hope that this week will be a week of very intensive work, and at the end we will be closer to solving some of the existing challenges. Secretary General said this is a perfect storm, and that's right. Many crises looming, many problems affecting the whole international community. The European Union will continue being an actor that brings security and stability and solidarity to the world. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions. We'll start with AP.
With?
Associated Press.
Thank you very much, Jennifer Patel, from the Associated Press.
Can you speak louder, please, because I don't see you.
Hi, it's Jennifer Phelps from the Associated Press. I heard what you said about trying to demonstrate that it's possible to pay attention to other crises in the world besides Ukraine at the same time. Can I ask a little more about how you plan to demonstrate that? There are countries around the world asking.
How can we demonstrate that we pay attention to the rest of the world? Well, where I was before coming to New York. I personally, it was in Mozambique, it was in Somalia. I think in Somalia there is not Ukraine, no? In Somalia, in the Corn of Africa, it is the biggest climate change that is affecting hundreds of thousands of people. I was there in order to show that we will support them, as I said, with these figures. And not only me, all my colleagues of the Foreign Affairs Council and my colleagues from the Commission are engaging with a lot of crises around the world. We are engaged with the crisis in the Caucasus. We are engaged with the crisis in Central Asia. Nothing that happens in the world is strange to us. Certainly the Ukrainian crisis is the most pressing and immediate problem that we have. But it is not the only one. We know it, and we are allocating financial resources and political will to try to help to solve them.
We're going back to Ali Barada.
Does it work? Or not?
Thank you, Mr. Borrell. My name is Ali Barada with France 24 and Sharq al-Awsat newspaper, a Saudi newspaper based in London. So I was quite surprised that you didn't mention Iran and the effort that you made to bring back the JCPOA agreement to life. Now that the window of opportunity is closing, is the EU trying to make any coordination with the countries in the region, including Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and others, in order to deal with the problem in the case of the fallout of the remaining time of negotiations with Iran? Thank you so much.
Well, I haven't said anything because there is nothing new. This is one of the problems that is not Ukraine, in which I have been engaged, me and my team, and I want to thank their work. We have been discussing, we have been doing la navette among the ones and the others. Until the middle of August, the process was converging. And after, the Iranians made some proposals that were certainly not contributing to look for a final result. But on the last days, nothing has happened. And I don't expect that nothing will happen during this week.
Is the opportunity still there, and what's the timeline that you're putting? You spoke
well, there is no
about a few weeks to reach an agreement.
There is a proposal from the coordinator, that happens to be me. There is a proposal on the table, and this proposal will remain in the table. I don't see a better solution than the one that we have proposed. And it's not something that's going to become caduc. It's there, and I am waiting for the position of everybody around this proposition, because frankly speaking, I don't see any other that could bring to a final
Why
agreement.
are you not coordinating with the countries in the region, sir?
I'm coordinating with the people who are representing the international community.
Next question. Majid, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. High
To the micro.
Representative. My name is...
You know the micros
Oh, can you hear me?
have a purpose, to amplify the voice.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Well, my name is Majid Gili from Rudal Media Network. As my colleague's question demonstrates, is true, and Ukraine is understandably is the priority. But in the Middle East, Syria is still at war. The threat of ISIS and terrorism is still in the background. Your allies, such as the Kurds, are under pressure, and the threat of nuclear Iran is still there. Aren't you concerned that the war in Ukraine is distracting you from crises and issues in your far backyard, which is the Middle East? Thank you.
No, not at all. And you're asking this question to someone that if I count the hours that I've been allocating to this problem, me and my team, I was paid by the number of hours that I've been devoting to try to look for a solution to the JCPOA, believe me, it would be a good result. No. In this case, certainly you cannot blame the European Union for not paying a lot of attention to this problem. Unhappily, by the time being, we haven't got a final result. We were close to it. We are still close to it. Let's see what happens in the next days and weeks.
Over here.
Here, sir. I'm Anthony Lauci from Voice of America.
Voice of America.
I would like to know if there is a plan to present a motion against the Nicaraguan government this week. And also another question is, what is your message for all the diaspora from Nicaragua who is here this week also?
I'm sorry to say Nicaragua is something that cares a lot for the European Union, and to me personally, I'm Spanish, I know very well what does it mean, Nicaragua, and who is ruling this country. But I have to say that today, in the agenda of the Foreign Affairs Ministers, we haven't talked about Nicaragua. It doesn't mean that we don't care about it, but there is nothing I can tell you about.
So maybe last question, Batul,
The last question.
or unless you want more.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
see.
Here at the back, the Turkish News Agency. You talked about food security, and the United States is co-hosting a food summit with the European Union and African Union. What do you plan to achieve from this summit? Will you have a declaration? And will the EU make any pledges at the summit? Thank you.
Certainly we will make pledges. How not? How not? We are, as I said, we are at the forefront of the fight against the famine, with measures that affect the immediate term, medium term, and long term. We know that the solution has to come by more autonomy from the countries that suffer food scarcity, but this is a medium term issue. In the immediate reality, in the coming days and weeks, in some countries, Somalia is a good example, the United Nations will have to declare a state of emergency, and we have to devote all our efforts in order to avoid that thousands of people could die, especially young boys and girls. So we will make a pledge, and we will present our plans, what we have already done and what we plan to do. And we will be, as I said, as active as always. But we will be certainly pledging and mastering the conference. But the conference is a conference. The important thing is what you do in practical terms. And there is no one, apart from the US and the European Union, who has done more to fight this big problem. But this problem, don't forget which are the causes of this problem. The cause of the problem is climate change and the Russian blockade of the Ukrainian food.
Can you
Two
tell us
things.
now how much you plan to pledge?
No, I cannot tell you now. You will have to wait for the pledging.
Last question to Ms. Cezanne.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Husam Azim from Al-Arabi Al-Jadid newspaper. From Al-Arabi Al-Jadid newspaper. So I have a follow-up on your first on the environment issue and the food summit and the problem because of the environment. As you know, a lot of countries in the global south are saying that they have to vary the costs of the global, the environmental problem they didn't cause. And many countries didn't give the pledges that they were in the global south that they were promised. And we saw, for example, Pakistan lately. So if you could tell us more, what are you going to do to help in this specific issue, and especially country in the global south? And then my other question is on Libya. Now we have finally a UN envoy, a representative to the Secretary-General. Do you, after 10 months almost, where the Security Council was not able to agree on a representative, are you optimistic that things will move forward? Are you planning a Berlin conference, 2, 3, 4? What are your plans there to move things forward? Thank you.
Unhappily, there is nothing new in Libya. We cannot invent every week a new instrument. What do we have to try to do is to make our tools, the tools that we already have, working. United Nations Special Representative, it has to be nominated. Yes, but it's not, United Nations is not me.
No, but they have a representative.
Yes, but it has to be working on the ground according with a stronger coordination with the European Union. We have our ambassadors there, but you know, the situation in Libya, I suppose you know, no? There are two governments. Each one of them being supported by a part of the international community. And it's quite difficult to work in this situation. It's quite difficult. We do what we can, and Libya is a rich country. That's the paradox, that it's one of the richest countries per capita in the world, according with the immense wealth that they have today. And due to this political instability, it's even difficult to try to support them. There is nothing new, unhappily, and by the time being, I cannot be very optimistic about the situation in Libya. And about the Global South, what is the Global South? Who is part of the Global South?
Countries that, let's talk about countries that were affected negatively by the climate change they didn't cause. Let's talk about these countries.
Well, there are different countries that claim to be part of the Global South, no? Oh yes, you can find people who are very rich, who claim to be part of the Global South, people who are very poor that are also part of the Global South. So the heterogeneous set of states. I understand what do they mean when they say that they share some geopolitical posture. But I cannot say what are we going to do with the Global South, because they are so different, so heterogeneous, that it's impossible to have a common policy towards all of them.
No, but those countries, because you are not answering my question. My question is very simple.
I don't understand.
Affected by the environment.
If you don't have a micro, I don't understand you.
No, thank you. One last question, the AFP.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borrell. I'm way back here. Michael Mathis from Agence France Presse. You spoke earlier about a proposal being put forward for a military assistance mission to Ukraine. You said work is underway, and then your microphone cut out, so we couldn't hear it back here. Could you elaborate a little bit on that proposal, what it might consist of, and what the timeline is for that?
I hope that the next Foreign Affairs Council in October will be able to take a decision, which is quite quickly for the European standards. We discussed that at the Dmytro Informal Council just after the holidays at the beginning of September, and if we can bring a proposal to the table of the Foreign Affairs Ministers in October, it will be really quite a quick procedure. But you understand, it has to be agreed first with Ukrainians, which are their needs, and how can we provide value added to this mission. The work is in progress, and I hope that for the next Foreign Affairs Council, because there is no other meeting before, the decision can be taken.
Thank you, High Representative. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Good evening.